Building it brick by brick.
Ideas Smith espoused are a central justification for laissez-faire economic philosophy that we're familiar with today. We talked about that last week. Laissez-faire economics is a key element of neoliberalism. But we see how much those who obviously continue to subscribe to Smith's invisible hand economic ideology today leave so much else out from other things he believed, right? And this is an excellent time, I think, to point out the inherent immorality of the neoliberal agenda, regardless of who is espousing it. So now that we've talked about the invisible hand theory, in this episode, we're going to talk about the visible hands of neoliberal ideology that have undermined democracy, have perverted capitalism, stripping it of any semblance of humanity, and eventually turning it into what it is today, which is a global criminal enterprise. John Maynard Keynes was a British intellectual, an economist who attended the Paris Peace Conference as a delegate of the British Treasury. This was in 1919. The Paris Peace Conference culminated with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles on June 28, 1919, which effectively put an end to the First World War. He later became a key advisor to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Keynes consulted on much of the economic framework for the New Deal. So, the Keynesian economic model was based on stimulation of demand. That FDR was elected president 4 times. He died in office a year into his 4th term in April 1945. The New Deal framework was so successful for the economy and the stability of the United States that it was kept in place by both Democratic and Republican presidents through much of the 1970s. Last week, we talked about Milton Friedman and referred to him as the father of neoliberalism. Well, if Friedman is the father of neoliberalism, then Friedrich Von Hayek is probably the grandfather of neoliberalism. In 1950, he left the London School of Economics to assume a post at, and this is important, the University of Chicago, at which he became a key figure in the history of neoliberalism. In 1944, 3 years after the U.S. recovery from the Great Depression and after the U.S. entry into World War II, Hayek published his book, The Road to Serfdom. To understand how influential this man's ideology still is, Representative Paul Ryan, the Republican from Wisconsin, claims that the book, The Road to Serfdom, and Atlas Shrugged are 2 books that formed the basis for his own political ideology. In the summer of 1975, a speaker had prepared a paper on why the middle way was the pragmatic path the Conservative Party in the UK should take, avoiding both the extremes of the right and of the left. But before he finished, the Iron Lady, Margaret Thatcher, reached into her briefcase and took out a book. It was Hayek's The Constitution of Liberty. Interrupting the speaker, she held the book up for everyone in the room to see, and she said, "This is what we believe!" And she banged Hayek's Constitution of Liberty down on the table. Ayn Rand and I remained close until she died in 1982, and I'm grateful for the influence she had on my life. I was intellectually limited until I met her. This is what Alan Greenspan said. In 1946, Friedman eventually moved back to Chicago to teach economics at his alma mater, the University of Chicago, 3 times now. where he would work for the next 30 years. Friedman and his Chicago boys feature heavily, very heavily, in the history of neoliberalism as they multiplied and spread their influence in the halls of power in the United States and around the world. But their sole and primary motivation and goal is truly the very thing they rail against: controlling the means of production and controlling you and me.
Building it brick by brick.